I just wanted to go back. I looked back today to see we have one more session after this, but see to make sense of what we've done so far, if I can make sense of it in my mind. So when we started, I was really introducing the idea of contemplative prayer or using mindfulness to just, in a sense, still ourselves to become a little bit more still so that we can have a sense of the presence of God. When people do mindfulness meditation, they tend to talk about being in the present. Um, so when I borrow some of those techniques, I find those really useful to think about being in presence. So in a sense, being in the presence of God, being able to be very centered myself and kind of comfortable in the sense that I'm here, I'm in this moment, and it's really very much about listening and just being in that presence, and sometimes hearing, and sometimes gaining insight. So we started out with doing some um, practice where we would just sit with our own breath and which is the most accessible way to keep us present, is just pay attention to your breath. It's also the way we connect with others, with the trees, with the earth, and also um, a gift of God is our breath. So to me, that's a wonderful place to begin. And then having a sense of just being in our body, so doing a body scan. We can listen sometimes to have a get a feel for what sounds are happening in this moment, in the present. And we begin to just observe anything that's in the present, just observing. So we did that kind of introduction at the beginning. We used an acronym called STOP, which is stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. And that's just a way to kind of say, okay, I'm here, I'm in the present, just catch your breath and then move on. And the second week we did that, but kind of expanded it longer, introducing using a word that might be a word that kind of feels like coming home to you, or a word for God, a word for Christ, whatever that might be, that helps you to keep yourself centered. It's just, in a sense, it gives your mind something to do, but it's also a really wonderful thing to do to come back to the present when you find yourself distracted. And then we moved a little bit more to noticing thoughts, noticing emotion, and used stop, but in a little bit broader way. And that is stop, take a breath. But when you observe, actually observing what might be body, head, and heart. So observing what's happening in my body, what's happening in my heart, what's happening in my thought, my heart meaning emotions. And that's a way to really understand the connectedness between, sometimes there's a disturbing thought and then, oh yeah, it does affect my emotions. Oh yeah, it does affect my body. And then when we stop, we notice that. And it all of this is just about awareness, and it helps us to be much more aware in the present and aware of of presence around us. So last week we really focused on thoughts. Last week we did a practice where we observed thoughts almost like we observe sounds. So when you hear a sound, you're only hearing the sound that's happening right now. You can't hear one that happened a second ago. You can't hear one that's about to happen. You only hear this sound, which means that you stay very, very present. So sounds can be a wonderful way to do that. It also is a way to hear something and notice it's kind of comfortable or uncomfortable. It might be piercing, it might be pleasant, and just allow it to pass. It's one of the ways that we learn, teach ourselves that everything comes and goes. right? Sometimes we think we're in a certain state and it will never go away, but everything comes and goes, and God remains constant with us. That kind of sense of stillness within us is always constant. So we begin to observe all these things happening out here and understanding, as I mentioned, Teresa of Avila said, that sometimes your mind can be on many things while God is still um, is still beneath it all within. So we can have this sense that there is stillness within, but also we're observing what's happening. And the observation helps us to understand everything comes and goes. It also helps to keep us present. If it's sound, it keeps us present. If it's a a breath, it keeps us present. If it's our word, it keeps us present. So we talked a little more about that, and also um, you almost watching thoughts as though you're watching a movie, because there are times when they seem to jump in. I feel like I understand my thoughts just like I understand sound, that all of a sudden they appear out of the blue. And sometimes I think, where in the world did that one come from? I didn't expect that one just now. And they sort of come unbidden. This is not when you're trying to focus and concentrate and do something purposeful, but this is when you're just sitting in the kind of default mode where you're just allowing, your mind to go. And more than 50% of the time, our mind is in a mode like that. So just watching it almost as a movie and kind of going, oh, there's that thought, and then beginning to notice if it's connected with emotion. Is it feeling unpleasant? Is it an unpleasant one? Is it kind of causing me distress? You might even start to feel it in your body. And you start to notice that the same thought is going to do that every time, right? So it just becomes, as you begin to watch those and notice those, it becomes a way to become self-aware that I am continually feeding myself this same idea, this same thought. It's a little bit uncontrolled until you notice you're doing it. And you can begin to say, maybe I won't run away with that thought this time. Maybe I won't let it distress me so much. It's going to do it if we don't notice it. But if we start to notice it, we go, yeah, maybe I won't. Maybe I'll really still and listen instead. After a while, um, you can begin to pay attention to that and learn from your thoughts and make room for other kinds of thoughts to enter than just the kind of default or the habitual ones that happen over and over. One of my favorite things, and I know I've mentioned this, that brain science has taught us in recent years. In fact, I will tell you, I was having a conversation with a woman who's quite elder, who walks and who I walk by a lot. Her name is Somali, and she's lovely, and she's out just appreciating the view every single day. And she'll say, I learned some new things. I learned some new patterns. And I said, the most wonderful thing we've learned from scientists is that it used to be they thought that you got to, I don't know, some absurdly young age, like 65, and you didn't create new patterns in your brain. It stopped and your brain stopped doing that. What we've learned is you can be as old as a human can possibly be, and you can still create new neural pathways in your brain, which is really wonderful. So, it may be that we have a certain recurring thought that keeps coming, going and going and going. And we start to notice that we're doing that. And every time it happens, it distresses us. It could be when the same person walks in the room, or it could be when some trigger happens that we remember an event. I mean, it can be anything. And once we start to notice that, we're like, oh, yeah, I always go down this same pathway in my brain. I think of my brain as a forest, It's like, oh, I'm going down that same path every time. And I'm starting to get distressed. But I can choose to go, maybe not this time. Maybe I'm going to kind of bushwhack a new path. I'm going to tentatively try to go that way this time. Maybe not let it capture me so much. Maybe go that way and not hang on to it as much. And pretty soon you've created a well-worn path, a different direction. very, very simple way to explain it, but that's the way I understand it. What's happening is that we can create brand new pathways in our brain, especially with the same triggers over and over. And I think the reason I think that's important kind of spiritually is because we get stuck at times. We get stuck with certain ways we think about ourselves or think about other people. And it makes it harder for us to just be open to both compassion for self and for other people because we have these thoughts that keep blocking that. But it's also more difficult for us to listen to what God is really calling us to if we just have these kind of things that stop us all the time and we keep repeating the same patterns in our minds. So I find that really useful to begin to watch thoughts. And what I wanted to do today is even a little bit of a step further than that, and that is to even look at emotion as we're sitting. There's a practice that I have done, and I'm always a little bit, I'm just going to say this up front. I have do this with a little fear and trepidation when I do it with people because I don't mean to have you all of a sudden find yourself in distress. So, so don't go into distress because what I'm going to do is ask you to think of something that's mildly irritating to you. So please, not the most horrible thing in your life, not the thing you're the most stuck on or that's terrifying. Um, because it's an experiment for you to do this with me and help to understand that some it if you're especially if you're with someone trusted to go through this kind of process this and then to see if there's a kind of release in a way. There's a kind of, oh, okay, I don't have to hang on to that emotion either, right? You can just notice an emotion. So the process is one that I learned from a teacher who's been teaching this sort of thing for many, many years, named Michelle McDonald, who I still learn from and still meet with on Zoom. She's a teacher I meet with on Zoom up to once a week sometimes. And it's called RAIN. So it's a process where you begin by just recognizing what's present. So it's recognize and that might and I really in fact the other day I was struggling with something and I sat here and took myself through it and I kind of had a breakthrough. So we'll see what happens with you. But it's recognizing what's present right now. So maybe there's something you're struggling with. It might be just something really mild, but something that you're struggling with. So you recognize it. Then you ask yourself, can I allow it to be here? Can I just allow this to be here? I don't have to chase it away. Can I allow it to just be here? Can I acknowledge and allow? And the I is for investigate. And that doesn't mean, going into deep psychoanalysis and saying, what does this have to do with my mother or something like that? This is really that investigation of how, what's the movie in my head? What am I watching? That thought. Do I feel something and what do I feel? What is the emotion? Sometimes we don't know what it is until we actually stop and ask ourselves. For me, sometimes I think I'm feeling really angry. And if I sit with it a minute, I'm like, no, I'm afraid. So, do I feel something? So, again, head, heart, and then how's my body feeling? Do I feel this in my body? So, that's the investigation part. And I'll talk you through that. And then we come to N, and I actually add two N's onto rain. The first one is nurture. What do you need right now? How can you bring nurture to yourself? And that's when we really open ourselves to God's presence with us. Um, Allow ourselves to be cared for. Is there some way that we can imagine God caring for us? Perhaps in even we think of someone that we love and imagine them. And that's when I did this the other day. All of a sudden, my mother, who's been gone some years, I could just feel her holding me. So that's a lovely thing to just think of, how can I be nurtured? The other N is then you kind of non-attach. See if you can just kind of go, okay, I'm going to let this all go for a while. I don't have to sit here and dwell in it. I'm going to let it go and I'm going to move on. And if you do this sort of repeatedly with the same issue, you might find that all of a sudden you're like, oh, that's not the emotion. This is the one I'm feeling. And it's a little bit the principle of AA, and my understanding is that, you have to acknowledge something before you can and accept it before you can grow, right? And move forward. So it's like recognize what's here, allow it to be here. And it sounds funny that this feels like a form of prayer, but for me, it's a deep form of prayer because my experience has been when I walk through this and I am struggling with something, I end up really feeling like I almost get, and I don't want to set you up to say you'll get an answer, but you might get clarity, even a tiny bit of clarity, and just a sense of being cared for. And that's really what we're looking for. So it's interesting when you sit quietly. Thomas Keating calls uh, centering prayer divine psychotherapy. I love that. He calls it divine psychotherapy. And um, and some of the other mystics have had other similar um, ways to describe it. So, what can we learn if we just sit with something we're struggling with and in a sense, we're asking for clarity. We just ask for it and then we ask for comfort. And that's okay to do, by the way. It's okay to say that I need nurture, I need comfort. It's okay. Unfortunately, we're not good at that at all. But if God is love, that's what God wants to give us. Just love. So how do we accept that? So I want to walk through this with you. If you find it's getting difficult or something, just you know what, just pull away from it. I mean, don't force yourself here, right? And just go, okay, I'm gonna just sit and breathe or conjure that word again and just do the word. Um, so don't make it more difficult. When I work with teachers who teach these kind of techniques, they say there's something called skillful means, and that is you know your limits. And you go, yeah, not today. I'll try that one tomorrow. So, and that's skillful to do too. So I think we'll try it, and you can just afterward we'll have a chance for you to tell me what you think.